This is my wife, Laurie Bluedorn, and I'm Harvey Bluedorn, and we were asked to talk a bit about our book, Teaching the Trivium, and so that's what we're doing. How we got started in the whole matter, it goes back to about the time we got married. And the day after we were married, we were visiting another couple, and they started talking about how they, when their kids go old enough and they were going to go to school, and we interrupted them, and at the same moment we both said that we're not sending our kids to school. Well, we hadn't even talked about it before, but it was an interesting coincidence. And then later on we got some kids, and we started homeschooling them. You want to explain how we got doing that?
Well, let's see, we were married in 73, and Nathaniel was born in 75, and our thinking at that time was that we didn't want to send them to a public school. We didn't know what we were going to do. We just knew that we weren't going to be sending them to the public school. We hadn't heard about homeschooling. I don't even know if we knew. We probably knew what a private school was. But our thinking was that we would not be sending them to a public school, that I felt like I could do it myself. That's about as far as our thinking went. And then at some point, maybe it was 77 or so, or 78, that someone introduced us to Raymond and Dorothy Moore. I can't remember what book they had books they had written by that time, but we read some of those books, and someone talked to us about homeschooling, and so we heard the term homeschooling, and my thinking was, oh, okay, that's it. That's what we want to do. That's the word we want. And
so what'd you start doing?
So I'm trying to think of the year that I started reading aloud to them. I think the fourth child was born. Ava was born in 81. That's it, 81. And I was getting a little bored with the baby books, the picture books. And I was getting a little bored with reading those. Not that I hated it, but it was just a little boring, and I wanted to read something that I wanted to read. And I'm trying to think of what the first book was. It seems like it was Treasure Island. And I thought, I want to read this book, and so I'll just read it aloud. And at the time, so that was 81, that was the summer of 81, so Ava would have been just born, Hans would have been 2, Johanna would have been 4, and then Nathan would have been 5, or maybe 6, 5, I think. And lo and behold, the older couple, kids, they enjoyed it. They would listen, not all the time, but they would listen some. And then I'd let them play while I was reading aloud, and I enjoyed it because I enjoyed reading. I always liked to read. And so they were playing while I read, and then after I finished that book, I went on to other books. I went on to Jules Verne, and other books like that, and I just kept on reading. And then at some point we thought we had to use a curriculum, and at that time there was Abeka. I don't even know if there was Abeka and Bob Jones, but it was in 1982 that we signed up with Christian Liberty Academy. Let's see, 5, 6, 7. I'm trying to think. Is that how old would Nathan be in 82?
Was it 82 or before that?
6, 7, 8.
It was right around then, anyway.
10.
Early 80s.
No, it was 1980. Right, it was 1980 that we signed up with Christian Liberty Academy. So Nathan would have been almost 5.
Mm-hmm.
He was still 4. I signed up I bought kindergarten with Christian Liberty Academy, and got a stack of books and workbooks humongous stack of books, which I liked that at the time because I always liked school books. And so
You liked it.
Yeah, I liked doing that. But unfortunately, Nathan did not like it at all. So we went through kindergarten that way. He cried every day that I remember. And he learned to read well, but he did not like it at all. And we had so many books to get through. 2 math books, a reading book, a science book, a history book, and these were textbooks. And then I remember the tests. He had to take tests. What in the world do I need to give him a test if he knows the material? And I remember calling somebody about it. I specifically remember this phone call was horrible. I said, he doesn't like it. He's crying every day. And they said, do it all. You'll be glad you did. Well, I wasn't glad I did. But anyway, he went through kindergarten that way. First grade, that would have been in 81. In 82 is when we had to move to Illinois because of homeschooling.
Yeah, you want to explain that a little bit?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure when we got the Raymond Moore books, but that's what began to open us up to maybe we didn't need this big stack of books and the like. But we'll get back to that. The truant officer showed up at the door. I actually worked a couple of blocks from where we lived, and she sent the truant officer down to me, where I worked. And we found out that our son was actually not quite of compulsory age, but he would be.
He was 6 at the time.
He would be in a couple of months or so, something like that.
He would have been 7 in 1982.
Yeah. But just short of that. And this was in the state of Iowa. At that time, there were, of the 50 states in the United States, there were 2 states where homeschooling was not legal at all in any way, shape, manner, or form. And Iowa and North Dakota were those 2 states. And we were in Iowa. So he says, well, you don't have to do anything until that he becomes of age, at which point he has to be in the public school. Okay, so we got a hold of a lawyer, one of the lawyers that had been arguing the case in Iowa for several other families. The Sessions family is what the name comes to my mind right now, and others. And he said, well, you have 3 options. You can stall, but that's, who knows how long that'll last, and in the meantime, what's going on. Eventually, you're going to have to face the music. You can go to jail. Well, we had 4 kids at that time, and we're not going to consider that option. And so he said, you can move. Well, we found out in Illinois, which is right across the river, Mississippi River, homeschooling was, we found, the freest of all the 50 states. So we moved from a slave state to a free state, is the way we like to put it. And
so that worked for us because Harv could still continue to work at the lumberyard in Walcott, Iowa, even though it was about an hour away, so he could just commute.
Right. We did that for a couple of years, and then we did other things.
So we moved to Illinois,
mm-hmm.
And then we did 2nd grade with Christian Liberty, and by that time I was done with that. That was just not the way I wanted to teach my kids, with these workbooks and tests, and that left very little time to actually do reading of real books. I wanted to read real books to the children. I wanted them I wanted them into what I called real books, and that meant fiction, like continuing the reading, the unabridged version of good fiction to them, reading biographies to them, reading real things about history. And if you want to study science, just read some books about the different science subjects from the library. If we wanted to study rocks, then let's check out some books about rocks from the library. Let's not just read a science textbook that has a little bit here and a little bit there. Let's really study rocks. Let's really study shells. Let's really study mammals. So second grade, I fizzled out in second grade. We did not complete second grade. So Nathan did not complete second grade, I'm sorry to say. And at that time, we were studying the Charlotte Mason method and Raymond Moore. And, our philosophy of education pretty much evolved through the years. And somewhere along the line, Harv quit working at the lumberyard, and so we were looking for some different line of work. And some friends and us, we thought about starting a Charlotte Mason private school based on the principles of Charlotte Mason. But that fizzled out because we couldn't find any students.
Weren't enough people interested.
Nobody knew who Charlotte Mason was.
They did continue with the private school for a while, but they had to reorganize the thing back on a traditional school format, basically.
And we continued on with homeschooling then. We dropped that whole idea of a private school.
And at some point, I came across an essay by Gary North on classical education, and he referenced Dorothy Sayers' essay on classical education, and we got to researching that out, and we got in I remember we got in contact. We were looking around, searching around, calling around, etc., etc., and I finally found one fella. I think he was in Ohio, which had done some research on the matter with reference to homeschooling as well. And he sent us a little bit of material. It helped us out a little bit. But basically we figured we got to figure this whole thing out on our own. Classical education, well, wait a minute, that's been around for a long time. Yeah, but we're applying it to homeschooling. And
in 1986, then we moved again to another town in Illinois. It was a bigger, better house, and had more land and everything. So we moved to it's called New Boston. That's where we are right now. That was in '86. We moved here, and it was at that point you were still reading about the classical education and.
Right, we began to implement some of the things we were learning. You taught some Latin. We found a Latin course that was self-teaching.
And logic. We found a logic course.
Logic book.
That's where I wrote my article, 10 Things to Do Before Age 10. And I actually wrote that for my own benefit because I wanted to cover all the bases. What are all the things I need to teach before age 10? What are the most important things? I didn't like textbooks. I didn't like workbooks. So what are the most important things to teach before age 10? So that was the beginning for me of writing for our book, Teaching the Trivium, or preparing for it.
Right. Okay, we started writing articles for different magazines, and at some point we had our own magazine. We had a mailing list, and so we started attending conventions. I think the first convention we actually went to where we had our own table was it was in Ames, Iowa. I don't know the name.
It was in 1989.
And they invited us to go there, and I think we gave a seminar or two on what we had learned about classical education. And then we also, while we're there, we'll have a table. And we got some books from a logic publisher. I have my own some Greek materials for teaching Greek, and that got us started. We ran into another family that was sitting next to us. I don't know if it was at that convention or soon thereafter, that explained a lot to us how the conventions work and so forth. And we started to do things with a little more savvy because we didn't have any idea what we were doing at that point. and we started writing articles, and I had conceived in my mind, we'll write all these articles and then we'll rewrite them and compile them into booklets, which we did.
First there were the booklets. There's a series of 6 booklets that contained all that we knew about classical education and homeschooling.
And then
through
we
the 90s.
Then we rewrote all that again into the book Teaching the Trivium.
Right, and we published Teaching the Trivium in 2001.
We did a lot of research on our own, too. We are not that far from the University of Iowa, which has one of the largest libraries in the country, probably in the world, I don't know, but in the country. And we did a lot of research there at that library with regard to education. And one of the things that people know us for is the idea of delayed formal academics. A lot of people twist that into something else, but all we're saying when we talk about delayed formal academics is many children do not apply very well to workbooks and the like when they're of an early age, and the number one index of intelligence is actually vocabulary. You ought to be reading to them, reading a lot of good material to them, and exciting their interest and teaching them how to learn. And that's what the Trivium is basically about. Well, in classical terms, it's grammar, logic, and rhetoric. In biblical terms, it's knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. And the whole idea is first you have to know the facts, then you have to know how they fit together, and then you have to know how to use them. That's basically it. 1, 2, 3.
So in 2001, we published our book, Teaching the Trivium, and
I wasn't quite done with the delayed academics.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
We one of the things was about we come to the conclusion that you really don't need to teach math with formal textbooks. Kids pick up math all over the place. And so we did a lot of research at the University of Iowa, and we were going to try and find the pros and the cons to early math teaching. And we figured, we'll find some on each side. Well, we didn't. All of the material that we were able to research said early teaching of math, formal teaching of math, it was not a good idea. It is not good for the kids. That's not to say that you don't have a particular precocious child who wants to do a lot of math books, and it works out well for them. That happens, sure. Same thing with grammar. You don't need to teach formal grammar at age 6, 7, 8, or 9. About age 10 is where a lot of this starts to kick in, where you can do the formal. You can do a little earlier, age 8, age 9, age 10, somewhere around there.
We have an article on our website and in our book that addresses this issue in more detail.
You can jump right into the textbook, and generally speaking, they know everything already. Most kids will know everything, and if they don't, they catch up real fast. It's a matter of the development of the mind. Their mind isn't properly developed. Most children's minds are not properly developed to handle all the mathematics or grammar rules and things of that sort at a very early age. And so what happens is when you teach them, they learn it in a rote manner, and it's literally physically stored in a different part of the brain, and you actually can cause sort of learning problems just by teaching them too early.
So we need to finish up this video, but some very kind people down in Brazil have translated our book, Teaching the Trivium, into Portuguese, and we're very thankful for that they've done that. And this video is actually geared for the people down in Brazil. And we've made a lot of friends in Brazil, and we're very thankful for that. I can't think.
Actually, we've been in contact with people in Brazil. When that first fella actually came all the way from Brazil up to visit us?
I don't know, but that was
a long time
15 years ago.
Something like that.
His name was Clever Nunez, I think.
That's right, something like that.
He flew up here and came to our house, and
He
we
flew into Chicago and took a bus to Muscatine, Iowa, across the river. I went to go pick him up, and he stayed with us a few days.
we had a wonderful time. He learned about homeschooling, and then he took that knowledge back with him down to Brazil and started a homeschooling movement down there. We're very thankful for that. So I think we can end this now. And
I think we're done.
And we thank you very much for translating our book, and I wish we could meet you all sometime.
Mm-hmm. Okay.